first thing I want to do is also thank and introduce the candidates. Karen Jennings, Debbie Rosen-Mckerrow, and Frank Paone. I pronounced all your names correctly, right?
You did.
Very good. All right. I'm going to also want to thank the civic associations and the local parties for supporting and helping to publicize this, and also Nicole, who wrote a very good article in the paper today. Okay, you heard it here. I said a good thing about the Capitol. Tom Marquardt will be falling out of his bed any moment. I want to give you an overview of what we're going to do tonight. And then I'm going to get a chance for me to put in my 2 cents. And then the rest of the night is up to all of you. This is going to be formal in the sense that there's an order, but we can talk about whatever we want. And Rob Tufts here, you may know. Rob is going to be our timer. Rob is a former candidate for county council in the Green Party, and he graciously offered to time. And it's everyone gets equal amounts, right?
Equal time.
Okay.
Equal time. My reputation's at stake.
What will happen is, once the candidates introduce themselves, they'll have a 2-minute time to say who they are, and hopefully to say a word or two about why they want to be your next alderman. At that point, we open up the floor to questions. Each of you in the audience will have up to 2 minutes, but hopefully you won't take 2 minutes to ask a question. And you can pose it to any one of the 3 candidates you want, but all of the candidates up front will have an opportunity to respond if they so choose. They will have up to 2 minutes to provide a response. And Rob is going to be tough about that. At about 8:45, we're going to close the floor to questions. And then each candidate is going to be allowed up to 3 minutes to give a closing statement. And then I'm going to say a couple words about the election, and that'll be it for the evening. And I know those of you who helped volunteer to set up the tables and chairs tonight, we really appreciate it, and hope you will stay to do that in reverse order at the end of the evening. So are there any questions so far about the format of the evening? Very good. Well, I did want to say a few words. And the reason for that is because I'm actively involved in local politics here, as are many of you. I put this on for a reason, and it was described in the Capitol tonight. These 3 people are working hard, and they're committed to run for office, and hopefully they're committed to stay, whoever gets elected, until their term is out. And it takes a lot of personal courage and commitment to do that. They may put up with negativity, they may put up with apathy, but nothing is more disappointing than to run a campaign and then to find out that only a small number of people actually show up to vote. That is debilitating. I think, Ross, we have had experience with that, and others in this room too. I worked for the city for 7.5 years, and I ran for Ward 8 in a special election just about a year ago. And I write a political blog now called Annapolis Capital Punishment. And it is not about state-sponsored executions. And it is, and I'm going to say to you, it's the leading political blog in the area. Although I do want to mention there are 2 other leading bloggers here. Brian Gill, and you want to raise your hand, Brian, from Annapolis Politics, and also Scott Bowling from Talk of Annapolis. You want to raise your hand, Scott? These guys are also bloggers.
Hey, that's Tim Koschenko.
Sorry?
Kim Koschenko.
Kim Koschenko? Tim. Hi. What is the name of your blog?
I live on Clay Street.
It's you, Tim. Hi. We haven't even met yet. Hi, Tim. We've been corresponding. Good to meet you. You do live on Clay Street. So I want everyone to take a quick look. I live at Clay Street, and there's links on Annapolis Capital Punishment to these blogs as well. I live on Clay Street, Annapolis Politics, and Talk of Politics. So, Nicole from the Capitol as well. You all know Nicole, and we appreciate that she's here. Are there any other reporters in the audience? Very good. Okay. Let me sit down for a minute here. First of all, I'm not partial. I put this on for pure reasons of getting people interested in the process. I'm not here endorsing or supporting, nor is my blog. I do want to say that absolutely this is the most important election that's ever been held in Annapolis, at least since the one that Ross Arnett got elected to City Council. And it's also going to be the most important election ever held in Annapolis until the primary in February. Of course, I have a feeling by the time we get around to the Maryland primary, it won't really matter a whole lot. Your vote is very valuable. If this election cost $40,000, and if 100 people vote, your vote's worth $400. So our job is to make sure your vote becomes worth as little as possible. I say that facetiously. But of course, if 1,000 people vote, your vote is then worth $40. This is what it cost us to run a special election. A lot of city employees, a lot of contractors, a lot of candidates, a lot of supporters work very hard to make this happen. So I feel that, and I think many of you would agree, when few people turn out to vote, the whole political process is distorted. And the sad thing about that is the true winners are the people who don't vote. 60 or 70% of people do not vote. They get what they want. They will always get what they want. So our job in this election is to make sure that the apathetic non-voters lose, that they don't get what they want. Because when they're the majority, they have the say. We want to make non-voters a tiny, tiny minority. So you have 3 committed candidates here tonight. Each one of them, I personally think, is going to have a very, very tough race. I personally think the results are going to be extremely close. So in that case, everyone's vote is really, really important. And it's also interesting that we have a third-party candidate in this race. I think if we look back to what happened in Ward 1 some years back, that's a very interesting development. But whoever wins is only going to be about 11.1% of the votes in City Council. It's not much, is it, Ross?
Nope.
11.1%. That means if you can't count to 5 and get that 55.5%, you don't amount to a whole lot. And that's part of the tough, tough game of politics. They're going to make $12,600 a year. They don't get a secretary. They don't get an office. They don't get a desk. But we hope that they get your phone calls all night long and all weekend long, complaining and bothering them about everything. One of the current aldermen has described their job to me as being public service with a stipend, which I think is pretty reasonable. It's not much of a stipend. And I think that's an issue we need to think about. But whatever happens, we're still going to have a form of government where the mayor, whoever the mayor is, holds the cards. We have a form of government where the mayor will hire and fire the highest paid people, all of whom now are guaranteed to make at least $100,000 a year. The mayor will still propose the budget, and the mayor will still control the city administrator, a position which I believe has been repeatedly filled by a host of essentially ineffective people, or sinecures, if you will, whose job description is unclear, whose qualifications and skills are sometimes questionable. And how many of you here know that the city administrator is actually paid less than the department heads he or she oversees? Interesting situation. We have a system whereby the mayor is both the CEO and the board chair. We don't allow that in our corporations. We don't allow it anywhere else in our government, really. Do we allow the president to sit in Congress or to control Congress? Do we allow the governor to be a member of the General Assembly or control it? Do we allow the county executive to do the same? The answer is no. But in our city, we still do. I bring this up to underscore how important the issue, our style of government is, no matter who gets elected. I'm pleased to see that this issue is bubbling up to the surface. I know that Ross and Dick Israel and others are working hard on this. And I have here tonight, in case you're interested, the report from 10 years ago. The commission was looking at the charter of how city government is run, and it recommended that about 10 years later it be revisited. That time is now. Finally, when it comes to elections, why do we even have partisan local elections? We're not talking about abortion, gun control, who can be let in at the border, or foreign policy. Why do we have partisan local elections? This was brought up in this report. People still ask that today. How many of you get asked when you're campaigning? If there were a primary, there would have been people saying to you, well, why can't I vote for you if I'm a Democrat? Or if I'm an independent, there's no independent running, I can't vote in the primary. I think I got that a lot. I bet Ross did too when he was running. So I want to thank everyone for coming. I want to thank the candidates. And I hope that it is not hard to get good people to run for office. The more people that vote, the more people that get involved, the more good people we will get to run for office. And we really can't afford more special elections. So let's hope whichever one of you is elected, that you stick out your term. Have I said that already tonight?
Okay. 3828, Precious 3821, Engine 38 respond for service call. Person locked out of their apartment at the Timothy House. Number 29 Washington Street West, apartment 312.
All right. I hope they don't get too cold. Anyhow, this is now time for each of the candidates to take up to, I'll put this out here, take up to 2 minutes to introduce yourself, and I'm not going to go in any order, so I have to pick someone first. And let's see, first name in alphabetical order. Fred is F, D is Debbie. So we'll go D, F, K. How about that?
I'd like to thank Paul for arranging this tonight. Thank you. And thank all of you for coming. It's important. Can you hear me in the back? I should speak up. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. Moved to Annapolis when I was 3.5 years old from Baltimore. To the house that we live in now in Admiral Heights. I have a bachelor's degree in journalism from the University of Maryland, College Park. I'm talking fast because 2 minutes is very short. I have a master's degree in management from the College of Notre Dame of Maryland in Baltimore. I spent 24 years as a public relations professional working in higher education, healthcare, and state insurance regulation. And in 2004, I started my own company, Chesapeake Estate Services, where I work with folks who are settling estates and seniors who are downsizing. My husband Steve and I moved back to the house in Admiral Heights in 1996, and I have been involved in the community ever since. I joined the Admiral Heights board in 1997. I've served as vice president for several years. In 1998, I joined the Community Association of Annapolis and served as president of that for 2 years. In 2000, I co-founded with Gretchen Clift of Wardor the Ward 2 Citizens Coalition, which actually was a group that was formed to deal with several threats to our community, to our neighborhoods. A proposed garage and multi-level garage and bus station at the stadium, a proposed visitor center at the corner of Rao and Farragut, a proposed massive addition to the stadium. I've been involved in the Rao Boulevard Task Force, the Rao Boulevard Citizens Committee, the city's annexation work group, the Clay Street Public Safety Team. I was a member of the Election Code Task Force that rewrote the city's election code. I'm chair of an event for Annapolis Alive, the Charter 300 celebration, and I served on the City-County Growth Task Force. I believe that the election in Ward 2 is about proven experience, and I've spent the last 11 years working in my community for the city.
Thank you. Fred?
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. My name's Fred Paone, and I've been an assistant state's attorney for the last 30 years here in Annapolis. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Paul for putting this together this evening. It's having a candidates forum is a great idea. The more we have, the better I think our citizens are informed. I was born here in Annapolis, yes, a real live native Annapolitan. Went to St. Mary's Elementary School, Gonzaga College High School in Washington, D.C., and Washington and Lee University, University of Baltimore Law School, along with Georgetown Law Center. Spent a year toward a graduate degree in tax law. I love my city. I've lived here all my life except for when I went away to college. I was raised here. My father was a professor at the Naval Academy and very active in the community himself. He served as a good example for the rest of the family. I have 7 sisters and brothers in addition to myself, and he did a terrific job of leaving a legacy of involvement in the community. It's important to leave something behind and leave something better off than it was when we got it, when we arrived on the scene. That's one of the lessons my dad always taught all of us. I look at the city council now, and quite frankly, in general terms, certainly, not in all individual cases, but in general terms, we can do much better. We've lost our focus. We're more concerned about toy guns than getting real guns off the street. We've grown more concerned about plastic bags. The government wants to make it a crime to use plastic bags. When I go down to Grawls and bring my bag that I got the last time I was there and use it, the city council would have you make me a criminal. And would also, well, my time is up. Thank you.
You only get 3 minutes at the end to wrap everything up.
Thanks, Paul. Welcome, everyone. My name's Karen Jennings. I'm a resident of the Homewood Germantown neighborhood. I've also have lived over here in West Annapolis in the past, and I'm a native Marylander. I decided to run for city council because I believe that the city should be taking a proactive, long-term, future focus to solving Annapolis' challenges so that we can maintain our small town, maritime way of life. That's really the heart and soul of Annapolis, right? So I think the most important thing that an alderman can do for their constituents is to be an open line of communication between neighborhoods and City Hall, and to engage citizens in becoming a part of the process and the decisions that are going to affect them. And that's really what my vision is for this position, should you choose to elect me. I'm an environmental scientist. I have 8 years of experience doing environmental consulting, solving all kinds of environmental problems. I have a master's degree in geology. And I also have experience managing staff, managing budgets, finding funding sources for different programs. But I think the most important thing that I do on a daily basis in my professional life is that I bring people with really different points of view and opposing points of view oftentimes to the table to come to a consensus about how to solve a problem. And I think that's the most important thing that an alderman really can do, is to work together to try to get people engaged from the community, involved, and working together to try to find solutions to Annapolis' challenges. So if you're looking for someone with a lot of energy, a lot of creativity, and just really wanting to get out there and work with people, I hope you'll vote for me on the 19th. Thank you.
Great. Thank you all. Well, now it's the audience's chance. Let me just go over. You will each have up to 2 minutes to pose a question. We hope you'll keep it to less to start. Don't be shy. Yes, sir. Would you stand up, please, and give us your name?
Jim Wilder. I live in West Annapolis. See, all the candidates are from Admiral Heights, and no one's been in the West Annapolis area. I didn't even know the candidates.
Did you want to ask a question with that, or
are you going to be Admiral Heights representative or community representative?
Sure. I think we can go in the reverse order that we just did. Karen, you want to start?
I actually used to live in West Annapolis. I lived on Tolson Street, and I've been door knocking there. I've been in that neighborhood 3 times now. So I'm sorry if we missed you. Maybe you weren't at home, but my campaign staff and I have definitely been out there. And I don't live in Admiral Heights now. I live in Homewood, Germantown neighborhood now. But definitely, my motto is no neighborhood left behind. We need to make sure that all the neighborhoods are getting all the same resources and the same information.
Very good. Anyone else want to?
I live in Admiral Heights now, but I've lived in Wardour. I've lived in different parts of the city. I grew up here. I have also been in West Annapolis and Wardour. door. I spent a good part of the day yesterday there. And, I plan on being an alderman for all of the people, not just Wardour, West Annapolis, Admiral Heights, Germantown, Clay Street. They're all part of my constituency, and whether they support me or not, no matter where you live, I'm your alderman, and I plan on acting accordingly. I've discussed problems, especially on Melvin Avenue and other places regarding traffic development with people there. I will be very well versed in the problems there, and I care very much about what happens in West Annapolis.
I too have been in West Annapolis. I knocked on every door in West Annapolis 2 years ago when I ran for alderman. I am encouraged when I knock on doors and people open the door and they say, "Oh, I remember you. You were here." I also am a member of the West Annapolis Business Association as a small business person. I joined that organization, and so I spend a lot of time and energy as a business person concerned with issues in West Annapolis, the West Annapolis Business District for sure, but the business district as it also relates to the residential community. But again, if we missed your door, I look forward to seeing you sometime.
Very good. Who else? Yes, sir, please, if you want to stand up and give us your name, please.
Yeah, my name is Jonathan Shuke, and I'm a small business owner in Annapolis. And I guess it directed at, do you have to direct it at one candidate?
No, whatever you'd like.
Then I direct it to all three learning candidates here. Being a small business owner, I've been kind of overwhelmed and shocked by the aggressive and blatant crime problems we've had as close as West Street, which is very close to the courthouse and in areas that are of deep concern to me for the welfare not only of my employees, but also for the people that come to our offices to get services. And I noticed that there's one of the candidates seems to have a law enforcement background and experience, which I think is a wonderful thing, but I'd like to get everybody's views on how, I didn't hear that in the opening remarks, except for one candidate, as to what you feel about helping with the crime issue and how you feel about supporting the police department, and what you think about local laws and the effect of them, and what should be emphasized, and maybe those that should not be emphasized so much. I appreciate the time, sir.
Debbie, Karen, Fred, how about that?
There were a lot of questions, a lot of points there. I'm not sure that I exactly know the exactly what you want to focus on.
In another way to say it is, what are you going to do about crime? And make it safe for people that want to patronize our business so we can pay your taxes.
Well, I think I'm a. You want me to start? I'm
Please,
a strong supporter of getting police out of their cars and on the street. I think we need foot patrols in Annapolis, in all communities, most particularly the higher crime communities of the city. I think that that's really critical. We need police officers who are known by the residents, by their kids, by people of all ages, and we need the residents to be known by our police officers, and the best way to do that is having officers on the street. There are, I'm not an expert in public safety issues, but I do know that, or I do feel, I do believe that we do have concerns in Annapolis, absolutely, and that there are certain areas and there are certain issues, particularly drugs, that create crimes, a ripple effect of crimes in all of our neighborhoods. And I'm not the expert, and I'm not in any way demeaning or trying to not be supportive of the Annapolis police, because I think our police do a good job with what they have, with the staffing they have and the funding that they have. They're an accredited police department, which is highly unusual for a department their size. But what I would like to see, because I don't have the answers, I would like to see the city bring together experts from other metropolitan areas, because we have metropolitan crime, we have big city crime in Annapolis. We're not a small borough, we have big city crime. And I would like to see, with all of the academic resources we have in Maryland, there are people who know who some of these experts are who deal in big city crime. And I'd like to see an event where we can bring people in to tell us, citizens and the police department, give us more ideas of things to do.
Karen.
I'm actually very glad you brought this question up, because I think it's a really good example of how an alderman can be like a proactive force for trying to bring people together to solve these kinds of problems. For example, there are police that are working in our communities now, but for the most part, people don't know who they are. It's important that the alderman introduces people to the police that are working in their neighborhood, because if people are better informed, then that's the best tool to start mitigating crime. You need to know who, I mean, our cops are in our neighborhoods. People don't know who they are. They don't know how they work. Cops can't be everywhere all the time, but if people are working together with the police force on neighborhood watches, which have been really effective in Eastport and all across the country, neighborhood watches have been a really effective tool for dealing with these kinds of crime problems. And I think that the alderman position should be a position where they're facilitating that process and getting the police involved in these neighborhoods where the crime's going on.
Yes, bring people together sounds great. Another commission to study the problem. To that I say, politely, balderdash. We have 8 young men that have been murdered in this city so far this year. And what has this city council done along with the mayor? We have 25 unfilled vacancies in our police department right now. 25. That's between 20 and 25% down right now. You want to have foot patrols? It sounds nice. As a practical matter, long term, it doesn't work. You want studies? Every major study has said that. It's a political answer to. You want studies? Every major study has said that. It's a political answer to a social problem. It's not going to work. It may work temporarily, and it can work in spots. Don't get me wrong. You want to put a lot of foot patrol during the Christmas season downtown? Sure, that's going to work. Foot patrols in living areas do not. Not long term. Short term, yes. What I would propose to do would be to fill the vacancies that we have on our police force, pay our police officers enough so that they want to stay here, make the retirement good enough that they want to retire here as Annapolis City police officers and go do what they want to do after 20 or 25 years. You want to solve the problem, that is the first step. We don't need a study. And we don't need, the Rodney King thing, can't we all just get along, because we've proven regrettably that sometimes we can, but sometimes we can't. We have a serious problem here. We're way down in the police department. We don't pay our police enough. We don't pay our fire personnel enough. You want to solve the problem? That's the first step to solving the crime problem. Thank you.
Very good. Well, again, I'm sure there'll be other questions about crime, but at the end of the evening, again, everyone will get 3 minutes to follow up. And what I'm going to suggest, just to make it a little easier, is each time we get a question, we'll go from Karen to Debbie to Fred, and the next time we'll go from Fred to Debbie to Karen. That way it'll be real easy. We'll know the order. Does that sound good? How about Scott? If you want to stand up and tell us your name. Scott Bowling, right?
Scott Bowling. I want to follow up on the crime issue. And my question is pretty direct and probably a somewhat short answer from each of you. We all know that we have a crime problem in the city. The headline last week was 2 people stabbed in 2 days. And we've had, the mayor come out almost a year ago and say, we're going to really crack down on things in Robinwood, and we're gonna, we had all these great plans, nothing got implemented. We've known for almost a year that we're down in the police department. There hasn't been a strong effort, I don't feel personally, by the city council to address that issue. And I'd like to know if each one of you sitting up there will make a commitment that if you are elected, that you will make filling the vacancies within the Annapolis Police Department, making the position one that people are going to stay, and it's competitive pay, and really make that a priority, because you do go over the budget and you do have discussion on it, and that should be something that should get more money than studies and things of that nature. So that's it's a yes or no, I guess.
Yeah, is that first?
Yeah, you'll be first this time. We'll go that way, and then that way, and that way.
Like better being last. Does that happen?
I can't please everybody.
The short answer is I will, and not only will I do everything in my power to make sure these vacancies are filled, but I'll do everything to make sure that the competent and the excellent police officers that we do have already are going to stay and not lined up to go to Howard County, which starts its officers off at 20% higher than Annapolis City does. Our benefits have finally come into the 21st century, and I'll give the mayor credit where credit is due, because under her regime, it used to be when you retired as an Annapolis City police officer after 20, 30, 40 years as an officer, you were greeted by having to pay for your own health care 100%. It's not right. Now, it's gotten better, and it's thanks in many respects to the mayor that we have and to the hard work of police officers and the union that they produce. But we're still bleeding. We're still losing officers. We're still losing good police officers to other jurisdictions simply because they've got mouths to feed, people to put through school, and it's not working well many times here. Thank you.
I have always said that we need to support the police and the fire department both to make sure that they have all of the police and the fire department both to make sure that they have all of the education, all of the training, all of the equipment that they need to be able to do the jobs that they do. I sat for 2 years on the Clay Street Public Safety team, and every week we talked about the crime that was going on and the concern for public safety in that community, working with the police department, hearing the police reports, hearing what the problems were, hearing what the constraints were, and it's very frustrating, and it's certainly frustrating for people who live in communities that are threatened. But absolutely, I think that I believe, and I agree with you, I believe that the council can do more and should take more of an initiative. We don't hire the officers, but the council does have the opportunity to deal with the budget, to talk with the mayor as the budget's being prepared. That city council, members of the city council hear the budgets from the department heads before the budget is submitted. There is an opportunity for input from council members, and I think it's critical. And I've had discussions with Chief Johnson on these kinds of issues, and I think it's important, absolutely, for the council members to take that initiative.
I'd just like to clarify my previous answer that I feel neighborhood watches are really effective in places like West Annapolis. In places like Clay Street, obviously, there's much deeper problems that we need to be addressing. And I agree that, if there are vacancies that can be filled in the police department, that it would be wise to do that. I know that there have been some initiatives in the city council to try to provide for housing subsidies for police officers to keep them in our communities. But I think we really need to be taking a proactive approach to these problems rather than just reacting to the crime. In Clay Street, I really would like to see a multi-pronged approach that does include police, but also includes faith-based communities, getting them more involved, reaching out to youth, providing support for families to make sure that families have what they need to, like if they're drug addicts and the families that we're helping them to get off the drugs, helping people to be able to purchase their own homes or rent homes so that they can get on their own 2 feet, and reaching out to at-risk youth, try to get them more involved in programs to train them and get them out of the violent crime scene. There are programs to do this. There's funding out there. There are grants. Living Classrooms Foundation has been very successful at implementing these kinds of things in Baltimore. There's no reason why we couldn't reach out to them and ask them to help us set up something here. And that's definitely something that the city council can be doing. Also, Casey Foundation is another good one that does grants for supporting families in at-risk areas to help get them back on their feet. And I think, you know, revitalizing that neighborhood in particular is really going to help go a long way to helping with the crime issues.
All righty. Brian?
Hi, my name is Brian Gill. I think that it's fair to say that 99% of everyone who pays attention to the issue agrees that we need to fill the vacancies in the police force. The problem is the 1% is comprised of the mayor and the police chief. As far as paying the officers more goes, I believe, and you know, perhaps the leading blogger in the city would be certain of this, but I believe that the pay is negotiated through the union contracts, which would be the mayor's administration. And I was wondering if any of the candidates had any preliminary ideas as to how to deal with such roadblocks. I know that Alderman Arnett has kind of expressed some frustration where the majority of the council, if not several of the members, want to get something done, and their influences can only go so far, and I just wanted to hear if any of the candidates had ideas about that.
Education, all of the training.
Do I start this time?
Yes.
Well, I think that's why it needs to be a multi-pronged approach to this issue. I mean, if there are vacancies that we can fill, that's great. But in the meantime, there are other things that we can be doing, and there's no excuse why we aren't doing them. You know, neighborhood watch programs, they're already in place. We just need to get people aware and involved. That's can be a big way to address crime in places like my neighborhood, at Homewood, Germantown, where most of the crime has been burglaries, or in West Annapolis. And then, you know, going into this revitalization effort for Clay Street, which has been severely neglected for a long, long time. And it's really time that we took this, you know, approach. No neighborhood left behind, including Clay Street. It's time. And, you know, while people are quibbling over whether or not we can fill vacancies, there are other things that we can be doing that will also help.
Yeah.
Why don't you go?
Well, you all can decide.
Well, Brian, that's an excellent question, but I think that while it's true the council doesn't do the hiring or the firing, this council has lost its focus on issues that are important to the city and the people that are here. They spent more time debating about a resolution telling the superintendent, a vice admiral in the United States, how he ought to be disciplining his former star quarterback for misconduct in Bancroft Hall, not even in the city. Then the council has spent trying to encourage the mayor and the chief of police to fill those vacancies. What we need on this council is some leadership. I mean, what we need on the council in many respects, Alderman Arnett, present company accepted, but we need a little bit of adult supervision sometimes. Have you ever listened to these people, watched them on TV? My God, we deserve better than this. I mean, what happened to taxation issues? I mean, nobody has raised the question, can we afford to pay these people? I mean, these are very real issues that the council has to deal with. And the Neighborhood Watch Plan, I agree with my colleague here. It's an excellent program, and a vigilant neighborhood is of invaluable assistance to the police department. I'm not a police officer. Some are here, but I think they would agree with me. They don't always agree with me, but I think on this issue they would. Thank you.
If I understood the crux of your question, it had to do with the police and the union and support. If I understood the crux of your question, it had to do with the police and the union and support and getting working with the administration to get what the police department needs.
Sure, sort of general strategies when it's an alderman coming up against the administration.
Well, I agree that that's something that individual council members can do, and working with the administration. I have a good relationship with the mayor. I think we can talk. I think many of the council people have the opportunity to talk with her and raise these issues with her. again, it's not the city council. It's not the city council budget. It's the mayor's budget. But you know, I absolutely agree that we have to, all of us, as citizens, whether you're on the city council or not, we all have a responsibility to be heard at city council, to be heard in the mayor's office through letters or emails or anything else about the concerns that we have. And if we feel that there is more support that the police or the fire department should get, then we need to do that. And I think it's incumbent on council people to do exactly the same thing.
Very good. Randy.
My name is Randy Landis. In the last 5 years, my personal property tax for small little Cape Cod in Yellow Heights has gone up 40%. 2 times in those 5 years, I've had to make a one-time contribution or an additional contribution to bring my escrow up to par, plus increase my monthly payment just to cover my increased property taxes. I don't feel as though I'm getting any more value from the city for my additional tax dollars than I was 17 years ago when I moved to Admiral. In fact, I feel less safe, my family feels less safe living in Admiral Heights today. A few years ago, it was real popular, and we talked about the idea of having a homestead tax credit limitation. And the incumbent mayor was very much opposed to limiting the amount of taxes that could be increased via our property tax. Would any of you be willing to commit to reinstitute the discussion of a homestead limitation or a tax credit or a tax limitation on our property tax?
Where were we in order here?
We each went first the last 2 times.
I testified twice at City Council about the homestead tax credit. You know, we each have our bills. Gas and electric goes up. Our gasoline, put gasoline in our cars, goes up. Health insurance goes up. That amount that we pay to healthcare providers goes up. Food at the fast food place goes up. Everything, expenses go up. Likewise, the city expenses go up, and the city tax base, the city has to be able to certainly work within the budget and work within the money that it knows that it gets. But I'm not in favor of cutting back any of that money, because every year the city's expenses go up. The city has employees that it has to reward with decent pay. The city has to be able to put gasoline in the trucks and the police cars and everything else. The city has the same kinds of expenses that we have. Health insurance goes up, et cetera, et cetera. So when I've testified at City Council about the homestead tax credit, what I've said is that I'm concerned about cutting revenue to the city when city expenses go up. And we can discuss, you know, on the side, how the city spends its money, and citizens have the right to come and testify at the council about the budget and how you think the city should or shouldn't spend its money. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the fact that if you hamstring the budget and put controls or put limits on the amount of money, then what happens when expenses do go up? Nobody expected gasoline to go up the way that it did, but that's a huge extra expense that the city is dealing with. So, and that doesn't even count emergencies or anything else.
I'll go next. I would certainly enter into discussions regarding the homestead tax credit that was discussed several years ago. I don't think it's inappropriate. I think taxes are too high. We pay far higher taxes for the same services, essentially, than people that live right over the Anne Arundel County line. If we happen to live out on off of Bestgate Road, I mean, a half a mile from where most of us live in this ward, or many of us live, our taxes would be 60–70% of what they are right now. What I would propose to do, and I would pledge that if I am elected, I will certainly at least attempt to do, is enter into discussions with Anne Arundel County regarding the tax differential that we pay. I live, like you, I live in Admiral Heights. I have a 2,000 square foot split level. The taxes I pay on that house, if I lived in Anne Arundel County, I mean, it's a nice house and a great lot. I love it, but I'd live in a $700,000-800,000 house for what I pay. The reality is as my colleague has just said, is that expenses do go up. The city does need revenue, and to some extent, we're victims of our own prosperity when it comes to property tax. But I would certainly think that there are things that can be cut back in terms of city expenses, and combined with county services as they exist already at substantially less diminution or substantially no diminution of services, quality of services, but things that are a lot less expensive. We answer fire calls all the way out to Bay Ridge as it is right now. Why? Because the county has to go all the way down Forest Drive. We answer police, well, not often, but occasionally police calls there too. Same thing. Thank you.
I'm not I guess maybe I'll stand up. I'm not opposed to a homestead cap on taxes. I know it's a very complicated issue because there's so much untaxable property inside the city limits. But I am concerned about the rising costs of property, especially for people on fixed incomes, and just also just seeing the diversity changes, the lack of diversity as our city has become a more affluent city overall. So it's definitely something I think is worth discussing, at least. I don't know that I have all the answers, but like I've said before, my sort of approach to these things would be to bring all the interested stakeholders to the table, people who know stuff about this in our community, and have a discussion going and try to come to some consensus on it.
Yes, gentleman in the orange.
My name's Dan Hoff. I live in West Annapolis. CBF just came out with their yearly report on the health. While Annapolis has a very small percentage of the shoreline, I was wondering if any of you had any proposals in mind for our little section of the world in terms of what we can do in areas like Weems Creek, which had a pretty sizable fish kill this past year, and Spot Creek and College Creek.
I'll let you all.
Yeah, I think there's a lot that we can be doing. The city is already doing a lot of environmental initiatives, but I think we definitely could take it further. I'd like to see more city-sponsored initiatives to try to help residents and businesses get off the electricity grid and reduce their stormwater and carbon emissions footprint. Weems Creek is a really special problem because we've had 2 sewage dumps on that creek within 6 months of each other. We really need to be facilitating a conversation between the city and the Public Works Department and the county to make sure that doesn't happen anymore. There's been a lot of work put into Weems Creek, and none of it's going to do any good if they keep putting raw sewage keeps spilling over into that creek. College Creek has also been really neglected. The headwaters of College Creek is almost completely built out. There's not really any stormwater management at all going on there. I'd like to see some more proactive approach to managing that. Personally, I feel that the stormwater mismanagement on the headwaters of College Creek is what's causing the sinkholes at the senior center there. So I think it's really important that we start doing something with that. And the city's been able to retrofit stormwater drains in other places with grant money and volunteer labor, and I think we certainly could do that on College Creek also.
Since we've already determined we need adult care at City Council, at least here you all can figure out the order you want to answer questions.
Okay. Oh, I don't think we have any problems.
We want to see how well you behave in that aspect.
Well, thank you, Paul. The Weems Creek is not the serene, beautiful creek that it was when I was growing up in this town. As a matter of fact, it's not even the beautiful creek it was when I bought my house on Williams Drive 23 years ago. The main cause of that, the one single thing that, frankly, I think we have really gotten the short end of the stick on is the expansion of U.S. Route 50 the runoff that comes along with that, the building up of Jennifer Road and the Annapolis Mall. I mean, I'm not against any of these things by any stretch, but what they have done to the plant life and vegetation around Weems Creek, somebody ought to be hung out to dry for it. The Corps of Engineers does not think that we need to dredge the bottom. We have asphalt on the bottom. We've got rocks that have been buried under Route 50 that were on many cases on Route 50, and have things from Jennifer Road. Where does that end up? It ends up in Weems Creek. It has ended up. Nothing will grow in there. Plant life, trying to plant aquatic gardens and other things, it's not working. Frankly, I think in that case we may need help. I hate to say it, but we may need help from the federal government, because they're the ones that helped cause the problem. And we've got waterfront that former waterfront that's now mudfront in our community. With regard to College Creek, I think that it has many of the same problems, but to tell you the truth, I'm as interested. One of the best ways to clean up College Creek is maybe clean up the drug dealing that goes around along its edges, and let the good people that live on Clay Street enjoy their way of life.
I will stand up for this one because it's important. Because I have stood up for Weems Creek. I was one of the founders, one of the creators of something we do in Admiral Heights called Meet the Creek. It's an annual event where we invite our residents to come and explore the creek on kayaks. My husband and I kayak on the creek frequently. We make boats available. We bring the water taxi in, and it goes up and down the creek. So people in Admiral Heights, and a couple of years we did it with West Annapolis as well. People who live on the creek can learn to appreciate the beauty and the wonderful resource that Weems Creek is, was, and can be. There is no question the creek is in serious trouble. The fish kill was an act of God, if you will. I mean, it's hard to monitor and do anything about the oppressive heat that we had. But there are things that we can do, and as a member of the Admiral Heights Improvement Association board, I was part of the reintroduction and the rebirth of the Weems Creek Conservancy. My husband sat on the Weems Creek Conservancy board and then on the Severn River Association board, so I'm intimately aware of both of those organizations and what needs to be done. And I agree absolutely with Fred about the concerns that we have about the creek. I would other than before the fish kill, I would like to suggest though that my husband fishes on the creek. There is an amazing amount of wildlife in the Weems Creek area. There are fish, or there are coming, fish again. There is life in Weems Creek, but we have to protect it. We have to protect it in College Creek as well. We've grown submerged aquatic grasses in our basement over the winters, and we've planted them. We've planted oyster beds at the mouth of Weems Creek off of Priest Point. There is activity, but a great deal more has to be done, and we're trying in the Improvement Association to work with the county to get the county, because it's the county's responsibility, to dredge the creek. And we're having a lot of trouble getting the county to see the need. Hopefully now, after the spill that just happened, they will take a little bit more responsibility.
Okay. Crime, creeks. Yes, sir.
Terry Morton, West Annapolis. My question really has to do with development. It's not unrelated to the last topic, because the stuff at the mall on Route 50 is all for more and more people and more money being thrown here. It seems that the development is inexorable. I guess the issue is, what do you think is possible in a practical sense from the council to minimize it or slow it down or control it in some way? The assumption seems to be that any sort of development has to be beneficial and therefore is good, but I don't think most citizens feel that way. I think we mostly want to see things not changed at all in terms of much of the trees and parks and greenery and stuff. It's a mixed question, but it has to do generally with trends of development.
I think development is inevitable. I think development is it's desirable from a tax base standpoint, but one of the problems we've had, well, one of the many problems we've had along the developmental lines is development that takes place right over our borders. We pay the price, but we don't get the benefits. You need a tax base. The only way to increase a tax base, at least, well, maybe not the only way, but one of the main ways, is to develop property in an appropriate manner. That monstrosity sitting out at 1901 West Street, empty, is a disgrace. It's not in our ward, but it's right just outside of our ward. It is in the city, and I'm sure it does, or will at some point, pay off tax-wise for the city, but what a waste. It's ridiculous what is allowed to be done. Now, the city council does have the opportunity to vote on special exceptions to the zoning ordinance. The zoning code is revised periodically. It's being revised right now. I can guarantee you one thing, that if you think that I'm going to have anything to do with the development of Grawl's property right here as a hotel, you got another thing coming. That's outrageous. Now, it's not development at any cost. It's got to be appropriate development with appropriate use, and as a member of the city council, I think we do have the opportunity to be heard, long and loud at times, and I think indeed we have an absolute responsibility to do that, and I'm not sure that this council, or maybe even its predecessor, has really been doing us a service. Thank you.
Let me tell you a little story, a little example about development and environment and things that people can do. When I ran for alderman 2 years ago, the property at the known as the Rogers Heights, which is between Rowell Boulevard and Admiral Heights, it's in front of the church, the Lutheran Church. There are houses back there. It's one piece of property. It was owned by one family for a very, very long time, and was purchased by Pilley Construction, John Pilley. And I called John Pilley and I said, I'm concerned about this property. It's on the edge of my neighborhood and I want to know more about it. And I walked that property with John and his partner. And what they proposed at the time, 2 years ago, was an 80-plus person senior high-rise development on that location. And I tried to explain to them, besides the fact that a big chunk of it is critical area of the creek, I tried to explain to them why that really wasn't going to fly in the community and it wasn't really going to work. And they were polite and I was polite, but they didn't agree with me. They came, I invited them to an annual Admiral Heights Improvement Association meeting, and they made their presentation with all of their lovely pictures, and the people in the community told them why that was not going to work. And the one thing I asked them to please do was to sit on Farragut Road someday and watch the traffic, because you weren't going to be able to get 150 plus cars in and out of Farragut Road at that location. And what they did was they sat there one day and they decided that we were right. It wasn't going to work. So what has been proposed now and was proposed at the Planning Commission a few weeks ago, and I attended that meeting to testify, is 9 houses to replace the houses that are there now. There are environmental issues. That is a very critical, using the term critical, part of the creek. But that's how you have to work with situations like this. You meet with them, you talk with them, the community has to show what works and what doesn't work, and then you can develop smartly.
I agree with what Fred and Debbie have been saying about, we are targeted as a smart growth area here in Annapolis. We are going to have to deal with development. That doesn't mean we have to give up and say whatever developers want, they're going to do. And I agree with Debbie's approach that we need to be thinking about places that are proposed for development, targeted for development, get in there early, proactively, get all the stakeholders together to talk it out so that there'll be a solution that everybody in the neighborhood can be happy with. That said, I think that the city could also be insisting that new developments have green technology integrated into it, and that also proposals for alternative means of transportation be considered with any new development. One way is the LEAD program, which gives points to developments based on which different green infrastructure techniques they use. But also we need to be thinking about more traffic studies and whenever there's a new development being proposed, or mass transit studies, to try to figure out how we're going to accommodate that. So that doesn't really, it shouldn't be, we shouldn't be allowing development that's going to disrupt the character of our neighborhoods. It really needs to be done with the neighborhoods in mind.
Very good. Who else wants to pose a tough one? Timmy.
I'm Tim Costanco. I live on Clay Street. I got a lot of questions, but I'll start with this one. I mean, in my neighborhood, people are scared to call the police. They're scared to call the police because there's retribution. There's bullets that get put through people's windows. There's bullets that get put in people's cars. Now, I know for the most part, yeah, we do have a lack of police. And I know we discussed that a little earlier, but what are you going to do? What are your thoughts when you go down Clay Street? Because I know the people that live back there, as soon as they make that turn, or as soon as they come home from working a long day, they get tense because they see the same thing day in and day out. They see the same 5 or 6 kids standing on the corner. They see the same people that may have gotten arrested a week prior when they did call the police. And now all of a sudden they see them again. So the confidence in calling the police and keeping people behind bars is not high. So after a while, people stop calling the police and they just start accepting it for what it is. What can we do about that?
That neighborhood's been neglected for so long that there's definitely, the city really needs to earn its trust again. And I think one of the best ways to do that is to be really aggressive at revitalizing that neighborhood and helping residents to, be able to feel a sense of pride again, and try to help families to get on their feet again. And we need to be, I think as a city, we need to be concerned about that neighborhood. And we need to be going down there and, using it to push so these drug dealers don't feel comfortable being down there anymore. We can push them out. When I'm sure all of you, or maybe you haven't seen the Old Fourth Ward kiosk that was recently put up, and at the dedication ceremony, the mayor talked about, one of the pieces on the kiosk is about all the old food smells that people used to smell from all the different homes and the vendors and the restaurants that were on that street. And the mayor said, somewhat jokingly, but well, maybe we should have a Taste of Clay Street, event, and have all the people down here with all the old types of foods that they used to sell. That's a great idea, to get people down there and just using that neighborhood and helping to get it on its feet. The more people that we have down there on the streets, the less comfortable drug dealers are going to be, feel just being down there doing what they're doing. And in the meantime, I think we need to be rebuilding people's trust. We need to, be making sure that police know the people who live there and the people know the police, and that they feel they can trust each other, and that they can talk to each other without being afraid of retribution, and that find somehow work around that, so we can find a solution to address the crime problems without having to be sort of stuck by the fear. Somehow work around that. But I think it definitely needs to be a dialogue going on down with everyone about what's going on down there.
I think that Karen actually hit on a couple of things that are really great ideas. But when you use the term revitalizing the neighborhood, you have to be careful, because there was a time when people were talking about revitalizing Fleet Street downtown, Pinckney Street, Cornhill Street, and what ended up happening is, sure, it got revitalized, but everybody that lived there is now someplace on the outskirts of town or out of town. They're now replaced by 1,000-foot townhouses, 900-foot townhouses that sell for $1 million. What Karen said that I really agree with, though, and I think I would certainly back as an alderman, is to take a neighborhood, like that. It's when the community comes together, when a community decides once and for all that it's not going to put up with this foolishness, when the drug dealers do feel out of place, that's when the crime is going to leave. Now, there's a reason why there aren't a lot of drug dealers standing on the corner of Franklin and Southgate Avenues, Franklin Street and Southgate Avenues. That's because they know that the people that live there aren't going to put up with that stuff. And even if they don't call the police, and I would imagine the police would be called very quickly there, but even if they're not, there are going to be enough people in that neighborhood that are going to make the drug dealers feel so uncomfortable that they're not going to want to come back there for anything. The spirit of the neighborhood is what has to be lifted. And as a member of the city council, I'm prepared to work with that. The Girls and Boys Club, the Stanton Center, wonderful facilities. They're doing a great job. They need help. We need more of that. We need more community pride. And once that happens, that neighborhood will turn around very, very quickly. But it's not right to just knock the neighborhood down and build a bunch of $1 million townhouses and say the problem's over. Thank you.
I think both of the bookends, both of my colleagues have said very important things. I think the word revitalization is really important. That is a key word. We need to get more businesses in the Clay Street community. We need to get restaurants, services, and I don't mean social services. I mean doctors, lawyers, dentists, the kinds of things that we have here in the West Annapolis business community. That kind of thing, bringing more life back, of that kind of life back to the community. But I come back again and say we need foot patrols. We need officers who are on the street, who have a presence, who the people, young people, old people, kids, everybody knows, and the officers know them. And, and people will feel comfortable with the officer's presence there. The people who live there will feel comfortable. The drug dealers won't. The drug dealers will leave if there are officers walking around and if they have a presence. A group of residents in the public housing communities worked on or were part of a plan for revitalization of certain of the properties and rebuilding of certain of the other properties. This is a plan that is moving forward. It had community input, it had resident input, and part of that plan includes home ownership through things like Houses for America and Habitat for Humanity. Getting the people who live in the community, not out people who live in other communities, and I think there is a concern of the gentrification of that community, but making it so that people who live there can afford to buy their own homes and have a stake in the community and build the community. There's a new organization called the Old Fourth Ward Citizens Organization, and I went to their meeting. That kind of thing helps bring people together.
Very good. Who else wants to take a chance? Brian.
I think sometimes there are bills passed by the city council apply with downtown in mind, you know, things considered for the Ward 1 and for no one else. And I think Randy's pointed out before that anytime that there's a big event downtown, the city solution is have everyone park in Ward 2 or have everyone go to the Naval Academy Stadium. And I think in the past some of these things have happened because of political courtesy. And I've heard some aldermen say, well, I don't feel too strongly either way, for or against this. I'm going to vote how this bill only affects a certain ward. I'm going to vote how that ward's alderman would vote as a political courtesy to him. And I wanted to hear your thoughts on that line of reasoning. Do you foresee an instance in the future where you may be voting as a political courtesy, or are you really committed to evaluating each issue on its own merit for the city and for your ward?
I was first, last, I'll go first. Okay. I think political stability is a good thing, but I will be elected by the people who live in Ward 2 and have a responsibility to the people who live in Ward 2. I really appreciate that you mentioned the stadium and the parking and the assumption by everybody else in the city, except those of us who live here, that is the city's parking lot, that is the city's parking garage. And by the way, folks, it is not zoned to be that. Every car that parks there is illegal. The city's relationship with the parking there is not legal. It is an athletic facility, and that's all that it's zoned for. However, realities being what they are, people do park there. And we in the Admiral Heights Improvement...
You park there 24/7.
The people in the Admiral Heights Improvement Association have worked with... I can't tell you how many times I've testified before the city council in the last 10 years, reminding city councilmen that that's not their parking lot, that is my neighborhood. But you need to have a relationship with all of the aldermen. I would hope that anyone on the city council can interact with and deal with any other person on the city council. I don't personally hold to that viewpoint that I'll vote for you if you vote for me, kind of like we've learned in 9th grade civics class happens, in government. We get elected to represent the people we represent and to stand by the positions that we stand by. And I think that there are enough issues in Ward 2 that mirror issues in the city that we can get collaboration and support from other aldermen, and certainly I would expect to be able to support other aldermen in their districts because their issues mirror the kinds of things that we have.
Well, as the third-party candidate in this race, I don't think that I'd be getting any political favors from anyone. I'm pretty much an independent voice for the constituents. So, I'm definitely, as I've said before, I'm open to working with people and interested in having those discussions, but I'm definitely not going to be trying to score political points.
Well, regrettably, the reality of life is that occasionally some consensus building on perhaps relatively minor matters, at least minor matters for people in my ward, may be necessary. I could have the best proposals in the world, and if I'm not getting along with other members of the council, it's going to be very difficult to get these matters through, whether they deal with liquor laws, whether they deal with criminal laws, whether they deal with zoning matters. There are a lot of people in Ward 1 that frankly they don't care the same way that I think I do about matters that happen in my ward. Having said that, I don't know why we have to, every time we have a city event, we've got to direct everybody to stadium parking. Debbie's absolutely right. That's our neighborhood. That's a neighborhood of many of you folks here tonight. We've got a mall sitting out there. I've got to believe those folks would love to have the traffic, both literally and figuratively speaking, in order to boost sales out there. If you work in downtown Annapolis, why can't you park at the mall and get a shuttle bus to come in here? Pay enough to cover the cost of the service. Why is it always the stadium? Always the stadium. I worked on the 4th of July for 17 years, and I'm very familiar with how that stadium works, and we certainly did use it. We'd be fools not to have used it. But we also used the stadium, the satellite parking lots on Ritchie Highway. Out here, we've got to come up with some other thoughts to solve that particular problem. But I think some consensus building on issues that are not of major concern, it's inevitable. I don't like it, but I'm never going to get something through if I'm not at least getting along somewhat with other members of the council.
Wow, how many here are aware that all this parking at the Navy Stadium is illegal?
I'm very aware of that.
I'd like to pose a question. When neighborhood and civic associations have concerns about land use, it almost always seems to be the case that they have to raise their own money to hire their own lawyers to fight against lawyers who work for municipal and local governments that they're already paying their salaries for. So they're hiring private attorneys to go to court to fight with attorneys that work for governments that they pay taxes for, which is derived from their property taxes, which is what they're concerned about protecting in the first place. So I'd like to ask the three of you, just simple yes or no answer. Will you consider, whether you're elected or not elected, will you consider filing a lawsuit against the NAAA and the city for allowing all that parking to go on there?
No, I'm a member of the NAAA and have been. I'm a season ticket holder, and it would be ethical for me to
Everything's a conflict of interest.
I will protect my ward's interests, but guys, I'm not going to sue myself, okay? There's, well, okay.
There are other ways to deal with those issues. There are other ways to deal with those kinds of issues than the legal system.
Yes or no, Debbie?
Yeah, if I thought that I could sue NAAA, I would have done it a long time ago. But what I did when the new management of NAAA, when Chet Gladchuck came to town, I met with Chet and I told him, because the former.
It's okay. This is very interesting.
Wait a minute.
We have 2 minutes or what?
I said yes or no.
Well, but then you got up too and explained your. And I'm waiting to hear Debbie's conflict of interest. You're not going to sue yourself. I'm waiting to hear Debbie's conflict of interest.
What I'm trying to say is, the former management of NAAA refused to meet with anybody, refused to return phone calls, refused to return any mails from the alderman, the alderman at the time, from anybody except the people that he was close to. When Chet came to town, I met with Chet. I developed a relationship with Chet. This was as the proposals were being put out there for renovations at the stadium. We met. He met with the community associations, our community association. He heard what concerns there were in the community. And, you know, I'll tell you very honestly, it was an eyesore before. The stadium is not an eyesore anymore. And the track that goes around it, the walking trail that goes around it, which is city property, which the city keeps up, which the city plants. I'd like to see more planting.
We paid for it with millions of dollars, and they only paid $400,000 one-time fee for stormwater management that was going to cost $1.5 million. So we basically spent $1 million plus wherever we pay for the maintenance of that track. That's our tax dollars out there.
And it is used by people from all over the city all the time. Day and not supposed to be at night, but even after dark, there are people on that, walking on that trail. My point is that there are other ways to deal with the issues. There is far less concern about the daily parking, although a lot of us still have concerns, but there is less concern about the daily parking that I hear from community residents now, because the property looks better, because there is planting, and we would like to see more planting. But lawsuits aren't the way to handle it. That's, you know, as you've said, you sit down and you meet with people, you bring people to the table, and you try to figure out what the problems are. We work now with NAAA in a way we never did.
Your 2 minutes are up, thank you.
I didn't get the answer.
Rob promised me he was going to be real tough about the 2 minutes, so Karen.
Okay. I thought you were
If you want to say yes or no and then go on for 2 minutes, that would be great.
No, I don't think lawsuit's the solution, and like Debbie said, there's better ways to work with on these issues, but I also would like to see more of an interest in other forms of transportation besides cars in and out of the city. So I think that would be another way to solve the problem.
Very good. Okay.
Can I add something, because you told me yes or no?
Yeah, but then you went on, so it was like
I didn't go on. While they were
you
laughing,
had the best
I said I
line of the
can't sue
evening, how
myself.
you're not going to sue yourself.
Yeah, right.
But that would be a conflict of interest, and when would a lawyer not want to sue?
Lots of time when lawyers start
No,
going
I
to
understand.
want to sue. The
How about this? I'm going to
NAAA.
yield back your minute and 40.
He will yield back the minute and 40. Will the gentleman so
Thank you.
yield?
I won't need that much time.
Okay.
The NAAA has not been this horrible boogeyman of a neighbor for years and years and years. While we've had disagreements, I've had disagreements with the NAAA, the fact of the matter is it's not always a crystal clear situation. I agree. It's a business. It is a business, believe it or not. I know you're shocked to hear that.
Do they pay
make
taxes?
money on football games. Do they pay taxes? No. Not property. They're not theoretically a nonprofit.
Yeah.
It's a big problem. But I mean, to paint them as a boogeyman as never having done anything for the community is not correct. But I think that we need to depend on other people besides them. They got a great deal, over that path. They had a responsibility. They were looking at huge bucks And our community was able to save them money, but they saved it in a way that was very beneficial to the community. So it's not, you know, it's certainly not all one-sided. But the answer is no. I don't think that suing the NAAA would accomplish what we need to accomplish for the most part.
Take it out on the 50-yard line there. Okay, thank you very much. Well, okay. Anyone who hasn't asked, Will, you haven't had a chance yet.
Well, my question is...
What's your name?
Okay, my name's Will Small, and I'm actually from Eastport, so I'm not from your ward, but my question concerns everyone in the city. Supposedly, Americans spend 30% of their income on transportation, and there's this big inability for us as a people to get over the difficulty of putting more money towards public transportation, but it would reduce all of our costs of living if we had better public transportation. What would you do to add some sanity to that dilemma, which poses us spending an inordinate amount of money on our personal transportation because we're not willing to spend it so that we can all get around more efficiently?
Well, I'm not.
Well, I think, first of all, we need to recognize that we spend a lot of money building roads. I mean, I don't know if anybody's been up on I-95 north of Baltimore lately. They're widening 95, the 895 interchange up to Hartford Road. 9 miles of road that they're widening. They're spending $1 billion to widen. The ICC, billions of dollars. If we put in another Bay Bridge, God only knows how much that's going to cost, right? So, I mean, there's definitely money for transportation out there. It's just a matter of where we're choosing to spend it. And, you know, as a city, I think we need to be looking at mobility issues a lot more. I live along the West Street corridor, and, you know, anybody who's been on West Street at 6 p.m. knows it's it's a parking lot. It's a traffic nightmare. And, you know, that's why, like I said before, I think as we have new developments in the city, we need to be including alternative transportation options as part of that design, and considering those options, because otherwise, I mean, we're just going to turn Annapolis into one big parking lot. It's already happening along the West Street corridor. We really need to be thinking about other means of transportation. I think also hand in hand with that is increasing the amount of people who are living and working in the city, because I also see that there's a lot of people commuting out of the city for work and people commuting into the city for work, and we either need to make that more efficient or get people, you know, build up our job base a little bit more so people can live where they work.
That's all fine and good. I think our Department of Transportation has done at least a reasonably good job. Here in the city, they've made our buses smaller, more fuel efficient. I think there's a higher percentage of ridership. They're cleaner than they were. They're cleaner burning in the fuel department than they have been. But the problem with building mass transportation is that it's expensive. Who's going to pay for it? Did you know that to extend the light rail down from Glen Burnie, Cromwell Station to Annapolis, I mean, this is with the state or the city owning almost all of the right-of-way involved, would cost roughly $30,000 for every person in Anne Arundel County. How are you going to pay for it? How are you going to pay for a monorail that you could put in, or, you know, do a tunnel under College Creek so the scenery wouldn't be disturbed? I mean, these are all things that cost huge amounts of money, and without an explanation as to how we are going to do these things, I don't see an answer here in developing anything other than, you know, more buses. I mean, buses, hey, you know, a bus uses up a whole lot less fuel and makes a whole lot less pollution than the 10 or 15 cars that would take its place. It's a shame that I have to make that comparison, but it's the way I see it. Unless you're willing to, you know, remortgage your houses or take out loans to pay for this, it's not going to happen.
Can I add to the, I'm sorry, but I'd just like to say that how did they build that? How did a private company build that rail back in like 1900 when it used to exist if it cost so much per person to do?
Well, the short explanation is that it didn't cost that much then.
Proportionally, though.
I don't think it did proportionally, nowhere near as much. The materials were much.
Sorry,
I don't blame you this time.
That's a whole other story.
Yeah.
You blamed me last time.
Yes, I did.
Sue me.
Okay, I'm the state's attorney.
All right.
We have somebody here, excuse me, we have someone here this evening who has some responsibility for the city bus works. Paul worked with the city on transportation issues. I think we have a decent bus system in Annapolis. It's not great. It could be a whole lot better. And I happen to think that commuter buses are really important. I've worked in Baltimore and actually rode periodically the commuter bus that went from Kent Island to downtown Baltimore when it got canceled. And we tried not to cancel it. The reason they canceled it was because not enough ridership. And they had a big bus, and it ended up being 12, 15 of us when I rode it. You can't, that's ridiculous. That's not economical. But they wouldn't put on a smaller van or a smaller bus. MTA just canceled it. That was wrong. And I think that the local jurisdictions have to try to work with systems, larger bus systems like that, to protect citizens. I think that it was incumbent, frankly, on the city of Annapolis to get involved in that issue, and I don't think that they did. But I think the commuter buses are important, and I think that you've got to change people's mindset, and it doesn't happen overnight. You've got to show them why it works for them. Maybe $3.50, $4 a gallon on gasoline will help do that. I don't know. Fred is absolutely right. People shouldn't be parking here. They should be parking out. They should be parking at Parole and taking small minibuses in. That should be encouraged both for tourists and for people who work downtown. I support, frankly, Alderman Stankovic's proposal in the City Council to do a feasibility study for bringing the light rail to Annapolis. It will cost a bloody fortune, but it needs to be looked at and it needs to be studied.
We've got time for one, maybe two more questions. If there's someone that hasn't yet had a chance, the gentleman in the back.
My name's Carl Von Schwartz. I live in Wardour, and we have an interesting phenomenon on Fridays around. It's worse in the summer, but it can be good all year round, depending, especially now that more people live on the shore. But on Friday afternoon, if you live on this side of Route 70, you can get pretty much landlocked in your yard because you can't get out. Because there's a wreck on 50 and everybody takes a shortcut. It would be very interesting if long term we looked at some way to get people from this side of Route 70 to the other side of Route 70 without having to go through the traffic. Wouldn't have to be very big tunnel to get underneath that road and eliminate that traffic light totally. But those are the kinds of transportation things we need to be looking at. We need to be looking at ways we can get around our town. And that's, I don't know what you guys feel about that, but we ought to be looking ahead, way ahead, into how we can deal with the pressure points. And, we're going to have them because Annapolis is going to do nothing but get more crowded.
I would agree with you absolutely. I think we need to look outside of the box for these things. I always wondered why there isn't an overpass from the end of Forest Drive area over to where Home Depot is. The Home Depot that you have to go down, you have to go to West Street, you have to go around, and we need to think outside of the box. I'm not sure whether a tunnel would work, but we need to think outside of the box and look at different ways to move people around. And you're absolutely right. I mean, the business community in West Annapolis is paralyzed when, with your example, people can't get in and out of the business community. So the businesses suffer, let alone those of us, you know, who can't get in and out of our streets.
My neighbors of my age that have a heart attack and have to go to the hospital.
Absolutely.
Well, you know, the state highway administration originally had proposed overpasses for both the Route 2 and West Street intersection and the Route 2 and Forest Drive intersection, and they disappeared. Money is what they claimed.
It's big bucks when you're doing infrastructure.
Well,
I agree with Debbie that we need to be thinking outside the box. I'm not sure that more roads is really thinking outside the box, though. More roads brings more cars, so I think that we need to be looking for other solutions. Maybe, you know, blocking off streets to residents only or something. There's got to be other ways to approach that.
I think you've got time here for one more, Nancy.
This is just a kind of a curiosity question, not a political question, and that is, does the city of Annapolis utilize electronics to control the lighting? The lights for the stoplights. I mean, doesn't that make the sense of kind of controlling traffic and flow? I mean, I don't know. Do they?
Theoretically.
Oh.
My understanding was that different roads are owned by different agencies, so that's why the lights aren't coordinated. Some roads are SHA run, some are county run, some are city run, and they haven't been able to coordinate with each other to work that out.
Well,
so that's definitely a discussion that needs to be facilitated.
Rob.
Time for one more?
Why isn't there an overpass? And I asked somebody at State Highway, why can't we get an overpass? Well, we don't build overpasses like that for Annapolis. We need to think.
So my last question, I guess for tonight, I'll make it, you know, about we're a maritime community. We have a lot of shoreline. People may remember what happened downtown with Isabel when that came in here. There's a lot of flooding. So what would you do to help lower Annapolis' carbon emissions? And now we know, and scientists agree today that climate change is a pretty big threat. So what are we going to do as part of citizens here in Annapolis?
Sure, Karen.
I think some of the things I talked about before would help. Finding ways to promote, help residents and businesses to get off the energy grid, to promote solar usage, find wind power. Also making sure that any new development is certified with LEED technology, green technology. All those things I think would help us to reduce our carbon footprint locally. And then also, I mean, the city's been very proactive in lobbying for other state initiatives to reduce emissions statewide. So I would support that, the continuation of that.
As some of you in this room may have also had the opportunity to hear Vice President Gore make his presentation about this, and it is truly frightening. It is each of our responsibilities to change the light bulbs in our homes, to pay attention when we're brushing our teeth if we're running water, to have rain barrels so that we can capture water to water our flowers and our plants. We each have a responsibility, and the city has a responsibility, and I think the things that Karen has suggested are absolutely what needs to happen. The city has to take, as a jurisdiction, has to take the responsibility to do what it's doing and more, and we as citizens each have that responsibility.
I think that it would be the city's job to encourage the use of the things that I've heard. I'm intrigued with the wind power idea. I always have been, but it costs money. It doesn't always work. It is expensive. And with regard to the rain barrels, I mean, that's great. You can have lots. We could triple, quadruple our sun-powered energy in this town. And you know what? It wouldn't mean beans. It might reduce the carbon this much. Hey, we're talking about a city council race here. And to encourage our citizens to conserve would certainly be a high priority. But the reality is that I'm not running for Congress right now. I'm not running for the United States Senate. I'm not going to run for governor of Maryland right now. No, just kidding. No, but the fact of the matter is that as a member of the city council, there's precious little beyond encouragement that is feasible for any of us to do. I would certainly encourage everyone to act in an environmentally responsible manner. But if you think that anything that any of us up here do is going to have a huge effect on the amount of carbons that are in this town, unless you're going to get the cars out of here and nowhere near here the way the wind blows, it's not going to happen. The automobile is the bad guy in this one.
Well, let's see. I think my clock's a little fast. Who has a good time?
8:39.
8:39? Well, is there anyone else who hasn't had a chance to ask a question yet? Mike, in the way back. You want to come up forward so we can see you?
Besides crime, the issue that really gets under my skin is a sense of the ineptitude in this city when it comes to managing projects. And I would point to that blasted air conditioning unit at Market House as an example. And if that was just one example, I'd say I would beat that one to death. And now we have an issue with the new police house, and you just wonder what else is coming along. So I guess my question to you folks, any of you get on the council, what are you going to do to try to stop the next fiasco?
Can you tell us what it's going to be?
City dock. It's going to be city dock.
Oh, please don't say that.
Oh.
That is a very. Could you pose the question in a way? I'm not sure they can get a grip on answering that the way it's posed.
Well,
Mike.
let me rephrase it. You're obviously not going to have any direct control over it. I understand that. Well, what do you see yourself doing to, I guess, try to get to the bottom line, try to find out what's being spent, not spent, how those things are happening, and putting in checks in places to try to prevent the next one? I understand that there's a division between what the council will do, what the mayor and the administration will do, but you have an oversight, I guess, responsibility for my tax dollars, and I'm concerned that the city council continues to be shut out of such things, and I'd like to know what you will do to stop that from happening.
Exactly.
Well,
who was the last?
Well, I think that you're right. The role is mostly oversight, and there's a certain amount of delegation that's inevitable. In terms of putting in a system of checks and balances, I don't know that you can put in a detailed system of checks and balances without paralyzing all spending that the government does for any reason whatsoever. Now, the problems that you have brought up specifically are ones that they're obvious to all of us. I mean, it's a disgrace what happened. I think that it's up to the mayor to make sure that the right personnel are doing the right amount of supervising in those situations. I mean, I'm painfully familiar with the problems at the police department, and I live here and I use the city market too. It's a disgrace what's happened. Perhaps a different system of checks and balances could be done through the contract selection process. That, I think, is where the problem lie, I'm sure, with the police department. The market house, maybe not. I think there were some underestimates. I think there were just mistakes. There is nothing that I can do or that I'm going to promise anybody is going to come out absolutely perfectly because you vote for me. I'm not perfect, and neither are the people that work for the city, but we could do a better job, and I think what we need is a better system of the contract selection process. That's where we need to go.
Yeah, as just somebody who reads the newspaper and tries to follow what's going on, I would agree with you. It seems to me that we're coming into problems when the contracts appear to not have been written in such a way that when there are problems, somebody's responsible, as opposed to you and I who pay taxes in the city. I think there needs to be better oversight about that. you know, I see Alderman Arnett sitting here shaking his head, and you know, I think I can watch the frustration of aldermen, you know, when things happen. And I think what needs to happen is that we need to get together, you know, en masse and try to affect change. Try to make sure that the process changes so that these kinds of things don't happen again. And just make sure that there is appropriate oversight, that we have people in place in positions who know what they're doing and know how to do it to the best of their ability, so that if there's a problem with a contractor, the city has protection and somebody knows what to do about it.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the exact, like where the breakdown was in the two projects that you mentioned, but just based on my own experience as an environmental consultant, when I hire a contractor to do work for me, I always check in periodically with them, make sure they're on schedule, that they're on budget, and we almost always have somebody on site overseeing what's going on to make sure that they are following their schedule. And I'm not sure if maybe that's what isn't happening, that there's nobody doing those things, but they definitely should be if they aren't. So that's where I would look first, probably, is to make sure that somebody's on top of keeping track of the contractors and subcontractors, because sometimes, at least in my experience, sometimes it's a subcontractor that disappears, and that's what's holding everything up, and in which case you need to put pressure on the contractor to cancel that subcontractor and find another subcontractor. I mean, these are things that somebody needs to be managing all the time, and so.
Well, I think at this point what we need to do is let the candidates sum up. They're going to get 3 minutes, and they'll get a chance to sort of sum up what they talked about, what they want to do as aldermen. I wanted to thank a number of people here. First of all, Rob Tufts for his timing. I want to thank Will Small for all his help and for taping everything. This is going to be available on the internet. You'll be able to get a direct link to it at AnnapolisCapitalPunishment.blogspot.com. Yeah, commercial. Maybe I'll actually quadruple my ad revenue tomorrow, huh? 0 times 4. I want to thank everyone who helped set up the room and ask you to help me for a few minutes afterwards. If you want to speak with the candidates when we adjourn, if you can move out to the lobby there and take a look at all the cool firefighting equipment there, some of which I think may still be in actual use today. Excuse me. I want to remind everyone that a week from tonight at West Annapolis from 7 to 9, the civic associations are holding a candidates forum where you will get a chance to see they'll be freshly rehearsed. They'll have even better answers to your questions next week. And I would also like to thank you all, especially for coming out, for being interested in this, for being concerned. So now, let's see, which order shall we go into here? Reverse from the beginning. We'll have Karen will have up to 3 minutes. Debbie will have up to 3 minutes and no more. And Fred will have up to 3 minutes and no more. So first of all, let's give a big hand to the candidates and the volunteers.
Just a real quick thing. I've actually been trained as a firefighter for the U.S. Forest Service, so I think that stuff's cool, so you should go check it out. But yeah, basically, I also wanted to mention, since Rob brought up the question about global warming, I'm really active in Chesapeake Climate Action Network, and I'm actually going to be jumping in the bay next weekend to raise money for global warming. So I hope to see you all there. I am the environmental candidate up here tonight. This is what I do for a living. I'm also the only, as a third-party candidate, I'm the independent voice up here tonight. I also don't take any money from corporations, PACs, organizations, or developers. So I'm definitely somebody who feels very accountable to the constituents of this ward. My main interest for this position is to, build consensus, to look for creative, out-of-the-box thinking, to try to find new ways to solving Annapolis's challenges. maybe some of you were at the Envisioning Annapolis lecture in September where Charles Landry said that, you know, if cities like Annapolis are really serious about their future, they need to be recruiting creative young talent that have the courage to look towards the future and think outside the box, and that's me in a nutshell. So I hope you all come out on the 19th and vote for me, and thank you all so much for coming tonight.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you all for coming out tonight. I know that a little chilly out there. It wasn't easy for you to get here, and I for one, very much appreciate that. What, even if I do live in Admiral Heights, is that what? No.
The football game's over.
Well, you won't miss more. Actually, by the time you get home, I have a feeling it's going to be over, but I hope not. Sorry, I'm a Ravens fan. I know what they've done. I can say that. But if I could get serious for a moment, I think what this council needs is some leadership. They've lost their direction. They need to get back to the common sense issues that mean something to all of us. We have talked more about serious issues tonight than I've heard in 5 or 6 times. I've sat through, God, how did I do it, city council meetings or watched it on TV. Frankly, I don't really care what the United States Naval Academy does with its former star quarterback for misconduct at the academy. I don't care about toy guns. I care about real guns. I care about real issues. I've lived in this town my entire life. I was raised here. I've lived here. I've had the same opportunity. I went to Washington and Lee. There, friends of mine went to Ivy League schools. I've had the same opportunities to go and live other places maybe and make more money. But this is my town, my hometown. I love this town. It's the best place to live in the entire country. It offers more opportunities for our youth. Let's not forget that while the city council is talking about plastic bags and whether or not you're going to be a criminal if you use one, we've had 8 young men in our community that probably didn't have nearly the opportunity that Midshipman First Class Lamar Owens had when he went to the Naval Academy and spent 4 years there as a student and leading the football team as co-captain. They're talking about what the Navy's doing with him, and we've got people dying his age and younger on our streets, in our ward. I mean, many people forget what our ward includes. I mean, we've got people selling drugs within the shadow of our Capitol building, and these aren't people usually that live, I'm referring to Clay Street and West Washington streets, and it's not usually people that live there. They come in there because it's an easy score. That's where we need to turn our attention. That's what we need to refocus on, issues like that. Not things about, not whether or not a toy gun, your kids are going to get arrested for, you know, making out like they're cowboys out in their backyard running around. Ladies and gentlemen, please go out and vote on December 19th. Please vote. Please vote for me, but please vote. Thank you.
I would agree with the last few statements, except the last one. I would like to thank you as well for coming and for Paul. Please vote. I say that to every door that I knock. Please vote. I said I would like you to vote for me, but please come out and vote because this really is important. You know, it may not be important to anybody else in the city, but it's important to those of us who live in Ward 2. And I would encourage you, please, to remember it's a Wednesday and to vote. I'm not going to go through the litany of the things that I've done before. I'm proud of my activities. I'm proud of my involvement. I'm proud to say that there is virtually no issue that has come before Ward 2 and most before the city, come before Ward 2, let me say it that way, in the last 11 years that I haven't been part of, that I haven't taken a part of, that I haven't as a citizen tried to move to the best resolution. And I'm very proud of that. I really think that the election needs to be about proven experience and involvement. somebody's got to be able to hit the ground running in city council, and I've been involved with all of those issues. I'd like to borrow the term leadership that my honored colleague has used, because I think leadership really is important. I have worked with the city council, both in testifying and working with city council people on the side when there are issues that I think are important, issues that are important to me and to my ward, to help solve the challenges that we have. I think as citizens, we all have the responsibility of expressing our opinions about the challenges that we face. But that's a far cry from getting involved and trying to do something about those challenges. And that's what I've tried to do over the last 11 years. I offer proven experience, proven involvement in gaining experience in the things that are going on in Annapolis. And I will be honored to represent you and to represent Ward 2. Thank you.
All right. Well, amazing. Yay. You met on a Monday night. We started and ended on time. It doesn't always happen. Thank you all very much.